This is a special Walker Cup episode. The Back of the Range Golf Podcast will introduce you to the finest amateur golfers in the United States. Some have competed in major championships, others have won USGA titles, and many have been named All-Americans. The one thing they all have in common? They all want to be one of 10 men chosen to represent their country at the 47th Walker Cup matches at Royal Liverpool Golf Club. This is the Road to Hoylake, presented by AmateurGolf.com. And now your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome back to the Road to Hoylake, presented by AmateurGolf.com. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg. Glad to see that everyone is getting excited about the Walker Cup that will take place next month. Lots of great feedback from all over the world. Listeners in Canada, Ireland, here in the United States, and yes, we have listeners in Hoylake that are getting prepped for the Walker Cup. It's the week before the U.S. Amateur at Pinehurst, so we're going to get some more episodes out this week, and as I said previously, they're coming fast, so I hope you enjoy them. Once again, this episode features two more amateurs on the shortlist to make the United States Walker Cup team. Casual golf fans are just now learning about Matthew Wolff and Viktor Hovland and their ascension to the PGA Tour from Oklahoma State University. But you're not the casual golf fan. You're listening to a Walker Cup podcast. You know that Hovland and Wolff were the 1-2 punch on the Cowboy juggernaut that won the national championship last year and made a deep run at a repeat this year. While they got a lot of the press, and deservedly so, the rest of the starting five was just as important. Players like Zach Bouchot, Hayden Wood, and the only starter returning to Oklahoma State next year, Austin Eckroat. Austin qualified for the U.S. Open this year at Pebble Beach and has been a consistent performer over the last 2 years and is looking to bring a little bit of Stillwater across the pond. I also had a chance to speak with Stephen Fisk from Georgia Southern. He just wrapped up his collegiate career by finishing runner-up in the stroke play portion of the 2019 NCAA National Championship. Wolff captured the title, but there was Fisk, showing that he belonged in the Walker Cup conversation. He's a first-team All-American, Sun Belt Conference champion, and won 4 consecutive tournaments in the fall of 2018. As the number 9th ranked amateur in the world, don't be surprised if you see him at Hoylake. You know the drill. Make sure you are subscribed in Apple Podcast and Spotify to get the latest episodes in this series, and make sure you're following the action on AmateurGolf.com for in-depth information during the upcoming weeks. All the social media links, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything you need to know is at thebackoftherange.com. Before we get to our conversations with Austin and Stephen, let's welcome back Julie Williams, managing editor at AmateurGolf.com, to get some additional thoughts on these two American hopefuls. Julie, how are you?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're doing this every week, doing this every episode, so to speak. And we just had this marathon event known as the Western Amateur. And we were kind of speaking of all these guys in the short list that are going to make a move and really kind of separate themselves from the pack. And then a mid-amateur goes ahead and wins it. So what happened at the Western?
Well, not just a mid-amateur, but a Canadian mid-amateur. So that neither team
doesn't help.
Good.
That doesn't help. What is Garrett Rank thinking? That doesn't help us at all, does it?
It doesn't. But man, what a cool story. I mean, I'm 32. He's 31. So I mean, I think that's a great story. And in light of Garrett winning, we went and did some research and looked how long it had been since a mid-amateur won some of these major amateur events. So it's a rare thing, but I think it was a cool story.
No, absolutely. I little postscript to that is the only U.S. mid-amateur that I ever qualified for was in 2012, Conway Farms. And I do remember, for some reason, I'm on the putting green and I struck up a conversation with none other than Garrett Rank. And we're just talking about, the course and this and that. And clearly that conversation spurred him onto this victory 7 years later. So I'm glad that I could clearly somehow I could help out Garrett Rank. But yeah, it's an awesome story. And hopefully we'll be able to speak with him at some point. But let's actually discuss two more of the guys that are on the short list that are still grinding away, trying to position themselves. We're going to have Austin Eckroat and Stephen Fisk on this episode. So let's start off with maybe the more well-known of the two, just because basically, Austin's been at Oklahoma State national championship last year, right on the cusp this year. So tell me what you know about Austin Eckroat over the time you've been at AmateurGolf.com.
Well, first of all, I think we are going to hear more about Austin Eckroat in the coming season because he is going to be the anchor of that Oklahoma State team that played so well this past season. Most of those guys have either graduated or turned professional. So I think we're going to hear a lot more from Eckroat. But I mean, he was the only guy not named Matthew Wolff or Viktor Hovland to win an individual title for Oklahoma State last year.
Yeah.
And I think he probably flew under the radar. We probably didn't even realize how talented a player he was because Wolff and Hovland got a lot of the headlines that were associated with Oklahoma State, but he was right behind them in terms of, scoring average. He was the third best scorer on that team. He was a U.S. Open qualifier. And I would say what's interesting a lot of times to talk with players on any team that's very good, like an Oklahoma State, just the experience of playing with those guys. I mean, just in qualifiers and practice, just going out to Karsten Creek and messing around and hitting shots in the short game area. I would say that Austin Eckroat's game grew a lot this year, just having access to those guys. And I think Alan Bratton, the Oklahoma State coach, is a guy who would really know how to leverage the experiences that Wolff and Hovland were bringing back. Every time they're playing in tour events or every time they're winning or they're going to a black tie dinner for the Ben Hogan Award, I'm sure he's bringing them back and, those guys are talking about it to the rest of the team. So I'll be interested to see how much better Austin Eckroat plays next year. But, somebody who's under the radar, definitely that guy.
Well, the thing that I also like about Austin and speaking with him is he knows exactly, just like you said, he knows the attention that Wolff and Hovland have received. And I think after speaking with him, it really did drive him to accomplish a lot of things on his own. He was runner up. I think he lost the Oklahoma State Amateur this year in a playoff to actually an incoming freshman at Oklahoma State. He qualified for the U.S. Open, which Wolff didn't do. So he's actually doing a lot of things individually, but it sounds like he is just, I think he's kind of ready to kind of get out of their shadow, so to speak, and then lead that team, like you said.
Yeah, it does make you wonder on what level did he feel that drive and that burn a little bit to, I want to be in those guys' shoes.
Yeah. So that's great insight on Austin Eckroat, definitely one of the more well-known players on the short list, especially coming out of Oklahoma State. So let's actually get your thoughts on maybe one of the lesser-known players on the Walker Cup short list, Stephen Fisk out of Georgia Southern.
Yeah, Stephen Fisk would definitely be an under-the-radar player who probably not a lot of people are familiar with. He did an excellent job with his leadership role at Georgia Southern this past year as a senior. That team got to the national championship as a team for the first time in a long time. I think that the players on that team kind of rallied around Stephen Fisk. Their coach, Carter Collins, the way he kind of explained that, he says, Stephen is the sheriff. The other guys are his deputies. And they all kind of buy into that. Okay. So I think Stephen's very honest about his game too. I talked to him in the fall. He was on this great winning streak, and we talked about where his game has progressed at Georgia Southern. He said, he wasn't afraid to admit he had a little bit of a temper when he was a junior golfer. He said he came in as a little bit of a hothead, and he's kind of learned how to manage that. I think he's probably learned how to channel that into just being very competitive, because he is that way. But he's also a really smart golfer. He talks about course management. I think he talked with the other guys on the team about course management, and they figured out that was kind of a strength of his. I think Fisk is someone who you maybe don't know much about, even though he went on a 59 watch twice in his college career. He didn't get 59 either time, but I mean, he has a crazy ability to go low. That's for sure.
For the layman that just looks at numbers and just looks at world amateur ranking points and doesn't know the player, doesn't know maybe their personal strengths or anything outside of just what scores they shoot. When I look at his ranking, and, he's the number 5th ranked American in the world amateur golf rankings, but a lot of his points are coming from college tournaments. A good finish at the Players this year, but, there's not a lot of, Western Am match play appearances or USAM match play appearances. A lot of his points are coming from the collegiate events that he played at Georgia Southern in the Sun Belt Conference, which truth be told, it's not a Pac-12. It's not a Big 12 where you find Oklahoma State. So do you think that will have any bearing on his ability to get selected for this team?
You make a really good point there. And if there's something working against him, that's definitely it. And I know, this is only one start and you got to look at, playing week in, week out. And you're right that he's in a smaller conference and he's, playing, not playing in loaded fields. But I thought that it spoke really well for him that he finished runner-up individually at the NCAA championship. So he beat every guy in that field but Matthew Wolff on a difficult golf course, on a long golf course. So I think that speaks well for him and maybe is a little bit of counter to that argument that, is he playing the best players every week? But, those are, I guess, the conversations that the International Team Selection Committee has to have, and those are hard conversations.
We're going to see what the U.S. Amateur looks like next week. Obviously, this week is the U.S. Women's Amateur. I know you have a lot of great information on amateurgolf.com that I encourage every listener to go ahead and check out there. And we'll definitely catch up later in the week. And I appreciate you stopping by again, Julie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Julie, for the insight. Look forward to speaking with you soon on the next episode on the Road to Hoylake. But let's get to our conversation now with Austin and Steven. Austin, welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, the craziness of school is over. You're into the dog days of summer, so to speak, trying to keep yourself busy as you're getting ramped up for, a run at making the Walker Cup team, a run at the U.S. Amateur. So what do you do to keep yourself busy? What has the last maybe month or so been like since school ended for the summer? What have you been up to?
Right. So right after school ended, or since nationals ended, we go after school for that. But I started at the U.S. Open. Didn't play too well, but it was a good experience. And then I took a little time off from tournaments. I was supposed to play in the North and South Am, but then I decided to take that one off. And then I've just been at home. I've played in the Transmit since then, but went to the lake for a little bit. That's kind of where I like to relax. But then been home getting ready for all that stuff as of the last few weeks. So pretty excited.
Nice. And you have you have your state amateur coming up at your home course of Oak Tree.
Yes. Yep.
And so I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, just to kind of give listeners a background, that's kind of what we're doing to try to make sure everyone understands who is kind of, ramping up and putting themselves in the best position to make the Walker Cup team. You're really no stranger to USGA events. You're medalist in the 2017 U.S. Junior Amateur. But,
right.
I'm kind of curious. You grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is about an hour from Stillwater. Were you just, bleeding orange from your early days of junior golf, or how did the recruitment process, or how did your decision-making process lead you to Oklahoma State?
I actually grew up a diehard OSU fan. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, my dad was a huge OSU fan. He's from Tennessee, Oklahoma, which is about 45 minutes from Stillwater as well. And I've had season tickets to football games for my entire life. We tailgated at every game, and it just worked out really well for me that they're also very good at golf. So. Yeah, and then I was being recruited a little bit by Coach McGraw in middle school. I took a couple unofficial visits, and then Coach Patton took over, and then I ended up committing to him my freshman year of high school. Did it pretty early, but I didn't really think there was anywhere else I'd go. So it was a pretty easy decision for me, and best thing that I've done so far. So
yeah, and you mentioned Coach Bratton. We had him on the podcast last season, and he's a tremendous gauge of talent, because you won the state championship as a freshman and as a senior, and then you kind of led your high school team to 3 state team champions. So he obviously kind of saw something pretty darn early.
Right.
So I want to ask you a little bit about Oklahoma State. It's obviously been in everyone's it's captured everyone's attention, obviously, with the national championship last year, the great run you did this year. I'm kind of curious. I'm sure Coach Bratton, Coach Dar had really good idea that it's a very good chance that someone from Oklahoma State is going to find themselves on that Walker Cup team. The Walker Cup has, kind of a different format than just about anything else, where obviously we do have the singles matches, but it's the partners are all alternate shot playing foursomes.
Right. foursomes every time.
Yeah, is that something that was ever brought into practice sessions at Oklahoma State?
No, not really. We did do some match play stuff, especially leading up to nationals or leading up to our Big 12 match play event.
Yeah.
And we'll do some match play stuff. And no, never really do the alternate shot. I mean, it's different. I did it at the Palmer Cup this year. That's even harder with the way that the format is for that, because you're playing, I was the first round paired with a girl named Malia, so we were, we play a completely different game, girls and guys, and I was afraid, like, if she got a little upset, I don't know what to say to her, I don't know if I should say something, like, if I was playing with Matt, or one of my buddies, and I could easily, push him or something like that and say, pull it together or whatever, I wouldn't have any issue doing that, but playing with a girl I don't know, that was odd.
Yeah, because you don't know if you don't want to say the wrong thing or just, I
don't want to say the wrong thing. Yeah, I don't.
So there've been several Cowboys that have been on this Walker Cup team, whether it's Jordan Niebrugge or Uline or Fowler or Hoffman. They've all been there, and the pedigree at Stillwater is undeniable. Everyone knows the names Mahan and Bob Tway and Charles Howell III. I'm just curious. I know you've been able to pick their brains and gain knowledge for maybe when the day comes that you want to turn professional. But have they shared any stories with you about the Walker Cup?
Not necessarily from those guys, but Jonathan Moore played at Oklahoma State. Was on the 2006 National Championship. He played on the Walker Cup, and there's a poster of him in our locker room. That's him, like, celebrating pretty expressively from he made the winning putt or whatever for the Walker Cup that year. I don't remember what year that was, but he was on the team with a couple teammates as well. So, he's shared some experiences with that and how much fun it was, and so not really so much from the other guys, but I see Jonathan Moore every day, and so he's talked about it quite a bit. Everybody looks at, on a resume builder, a Walker Cupper. It's got a ring to it, kind of.
Oh, absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
So for the last 2 years, Oklahoma State, I would say that more so than any other college program in the country, and perhaps even in history, maybe for the last 2 years, especially winning the national championship in 2018. And then you make the deep run this year, and then you're on the Golf Channel show Driven, produced by Ricky Fowler. You come in as a freshman and win a national championship. Do you remember maybe when the enormity of playing for Oklahoma State might have first hit you, looking back at just first getting on campus saying, okay, I'm here now? And what was maybe your first taste of, okay, this is maybe a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be?
Coming into school, I thought I was a hot shot. I was coming in, I'm going to run this thing, I'll be out here soon or whatever. And, qualify a couple times, like, start missing tournaments, like, wow, these guys are really good, but eventually, I got in the lineup, and, we just kept winning, and it was just like, wow, we're good. And it was just something that kind of, what was crazy to me is, in the way I try to explain it to my friends, is like, the top 5 guys on the PGA Tour, normally they're playing well, but, like, all 5 of them don't play all that great every tournament. It was like, it seemed like every tournament we played, we had 4 or 5 guys that finished really high, and it was, for over 2 years, that was really cool to experience. And, next year's going to be a different, it could be the same thing, but it's obviously, we're going to have to work a lot harder and, kind of be an underdog, but, I still think we'll be pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, you're referencing the fact that Matthew Wolff and Viktor Hovland have gone on to the pro ranks, and, they're going to be household names if they aren't already household names on the PGA Tour. They rightfully so have, garnered all that attention. And, I guess for someone that's on the outside looking in, they could think, well, okay, you guys just leaned on those two to carry you through. But, in college golf, it's 5 players and 4 scores counting in stroke play. And then even in match play, you need 3 out of 5 to win. And I guess the reason I kind of wanted to bring that up is because, no matter how dominant they were, you still needed the rest of the team to perform so you can, win tournaments and win matches. And I guess the same thing could be said in the Palmer Cup or even in a Walker Cup. So I guess what are some of the things that you learned being on this team for the last 2 years at Oklahoma State that you perhaps brought to the Palmer Cup and could bring to the Walker Cup team?
I think you learn a lot. College golf is different. Every event you're playing a stroke play event, and you always want your teammates to play well, but you're kind of wanting to beat them the whole time. And, you don't really learn the real, like, kind of what you would experience in a Palmer Cup or a Walker Cup, where you're like truly like you see them having a 20-footer and you're like you're like begging for it to go in,
Right.
kind of that mindset that you have until you get to those match play events where you're, I mean, I remember watching the last couple holes of the match against Texas or this year or the year before, whenever you just you could watch your buddy and you were actually nervous for them, and you get that way in stroke play events too, but, you want to be playing the best, you want to be winning the tournaments, so I guess that's something that you can bring to the Walker Cup, being in a situation where, like, I've experienced feeling nerves for other players, and really wanting them to do well. And that's something that you have to have for a Walker Cup or a Palmer Cup.
So Walker Cup, so you were not invited to the practice session in December, and it's really interesting. I've looked at the people that were invited, I looked at people that weren't invited, and it's crazy how things jump up and as far as like world amateur ranking points, right now you're 25th in the world, you're 11 on the for the US list, so to speak, and I think your world amateur ranking for the first week of 2019 was around 65, so things just fluctuate just up and down. So you weren't at that session in South Florida in December, but Wolff was there. Did you get maybe any feedback from what he experienced? And how did the fact that you weren't there, or someone that was there, a fellow teammate, how did that kind of maybe get you into gear for this 6-month push to make the team?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously disappointing, but I wasn't, I had no reason to be there at that time. I was playing poorly, and but I got to talk to Matt about it. He said it was a lot of fun, and told me about the captain, and he really liked him, and he was telling me, he kind of told me that I should, and something I really need to work for. So
I wanted to ask, it's not going to be the first time that, you've represented the U.S. You did Junior World Cup. You obviously did Palmer Cup, like we mentioned. And gosh, you've played a U.S. Am, a U.S. Junior, a U.S. Open, plenty of opportunities for first tee jitters, but representing your country, can you share a story maybe of first tee jitters at either Palmer or the Junior World Cup?
Yeah, the Junior World Cup, I was actually teammates with Matt at that. And whenever we got out there, that was a whole new experience. And playing there, especially overseas, like it will be for the Walker Cup, it's exciting. It's something that you don't really get to do very often. It's something that everybody wants to do. And yes, being on the first tee in Japan, I remember I was just like, our coaches kind of explained it to us, how much it means to play in front of your country, or for your country, and getting to do it somewhere else, I was so nervous, and I enjoyed it. And team played really, really well. We broke the record over there, I think, 36 under or whatever. And, it's just something that's really cool. Something that I really would look forward to doing.
Nice.
It was pretty exciting.
Your family's got to be tremendously proud of all of your accomplishments, both on and off the golf course, All-American and National Championship, and then qualifying for this year's Open at Pebble Beach. But can you maybe think or pinpoint maybe one person in your family that would maybe be a little bit more emotional than others if you had another opportunity to go to Hoylake and make that team?
Oh, my entire family. Yeah, it's my dad used to, because I'm really level-headed, making nothing but really on the golf course, I don't get upset or whatever. And my dad would be caddying for me, and, he used to be a little intense. It's like, you don't care. But it was, my family they love it. And I think my entire extended family would be there too. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I have a really good, family support behind me, and it's pretty awesome.
So you have, you've played the Trans-Miss. You didn't do North-South. You have, just a couple more tournaments. Obviously, the U.S. Amateurs coming up.
Western Amateur as well.
It's interesting. Some are taking different strategies. Some are not playing it to stay fresh for the U.S. Am. Some are kind of maybe backloading their schedule to kind of ramp up for everything. So do you take any sort of a specific strategy, or do you just kind of go with how you feel? Because you're pretty much You're obviously, you're looking at the numbers, where you sit. You're not,
exactly.
Yeah. So you're not in the top 3, but you're also not way outside looking in. I mean, it's right there for you.
Yeah.
So do you, is that your strategy based on the courses? Is Pinehurst something that sets up well for you, or how do you kind of look at the next 2 months, and how have you put it together?
Well, I really don't like to play the game on rankings. It's not something I've never really paid that close of attention to. I kind of just want to play when I want to play,
Right.
but this year I kind of have a little bit, nothing too extreme, but I have decided, play the big ones, play where I feel comfortable and give myself the best chance I can. You have to play the Western and you have to play the USM. So those are events that, you can't skip out on. And I love playing golf, and I guess it's Michigan this year, but, this time of year going up there is nice. And, the US Amateur is something that, everybody looks forward to either way. It doesn't matter if you're playing for a Walker Cup or not.
Sure.
And, my state amateurs, luckily if I do well, it won't affect me on the rankings. So it's something these are the events that I like to play.
Yeah, absolutely. When you got something like that, I keep thinking back to the fact that the winner of this year's U.S. Amateur has guaranteed tee times at the Masters next year with Tiger Woods. Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because I spoke with Viktor and I spoke with Devin Bling after the fact, and I was just thinking to myself, man, there's going to be 2 guys just like that this August that are going to be standing on that championship tee. They know they're in the Masters, both of them. So I've always thought that the semifinal match of the U.S. Amateur, that has got to be. I mean, that has got to be the worst.
Oh yeah, that's got to be. I haven't had the opportunity to experience it yet, but hopefully, if I do, it'll.
Well,
I bet it won't let us down. I think it'll be pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, forget this conversation. Don't damn it, Ben just totally talked me into this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
Come on, man.
Yeah, don't think about that. So Links Golf, obviously the Walker Cup is over at Hoylake at Royal Liverpool. Tons of history at Royal Liverpool. The match that basically birthed the Walker Cup was there. Have you played much links golf? What's been your experience? No.
I've never, I mean, I guess I've played like links golf in America, but that's not really, I've never been overseas to play in, the European style of links sports or anything. No, it's gotta be pretty similar, hit good shots and make good scores. It'll be different. I hope I get the chance to play there.
Well, Austin, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a really, busy and crazy part of the summer where you're kind of ramping up for all these great things with the Western and the USAM, and then obviously the chance to represent the U.S. So I'm glad you could take the time to do this. Best of luck in the rest of the summer, and hopefully we'll see you in Hoylake.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Austin. Good luck to you at the USAM at Pinehurst and next season at Oklahoma State. Our next guest will be at the USAM as well. Let's welcome in the first-team All-American from Georgia Southern, Stephen Fisk. Stephen, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, we're trying to highlight a lot of the guys that are on the short list here for the Walker Cup, what they're doing this summer, what they've done for the past several years to put themselves in a position to be at this spot. You're currently ranked, 8th in the world. You're right around 5'6", U.S. ranked amateur in the United States. Tell me a little bit about the last couple of weeks. What tournaments you've been playing in? How's your summer gone since NCAA's ended?
I played what was still a web.com event.
Sure.
About 3 weeks after NCAA's, and then I played the Players Am last week. So it's been pretty light for me, just trying to backload the schedule a little bit with Western coming up and USAM after that. So I was trying and stay pretty fresh for the end of the summer and hopefully make Walker Cup, and that'd be pretty cool. So I'd like to kind of be rolling into that.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is you're fortunate enough to have that world amateur ranking that you don't feel like you're probably chasing as much as maybe some of the other guys, so you can kind of be a little bit more strategic and keep yourself fresh. Is that basically what your goal's been?
A little bit, yeah. I had some wrist issues in the spring semester, so I was trying to give myself a little bit of time off after NCAAs just to rest and try and take it as easy as possible. And thankfully, when I played well at NCAAs, it kind of took me from maybe outside looking in to hopefully on the radar for making the squad. But honestly, I think the schedule would have been about the same either way, just from a health standpoint.
Sure. You so you grew up in Stockbridge, Georgia, and I love the stories of how people get into the game. It's pretty consistent first question I ask anyone that comes on the podcast. And we get all sorts of stories. Someone grew up playing baseball and someone just threw a club in their hands and all of a sudden they fell in love with it. People that grow up at a country club or get involved with a junior golf program. How did you get into the game of golf?
Yeah, so when I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents built and co-owned a driving range and par 3 course. So I'd spend all my time down there just practicing and playing the par 3 pretty much all day long, especially in the summers. And I actually didn't really go to, I guess, what you would call a standard course, 18-hole par 72, until I was about 14. I didn't really go out to one of those until I was about 14 on a regular basis.
When I hear that, like, your parents co-owned and built this, now, were your parents PGA professionals? Like, how did they decide to do something like this?
No, Mom doesn't really play at all, and Dad doesn't play much anymore, but he played a little bit back then, and he just, for some reason, thought that there wasn't really anything like that around our area. It was actually a farm before the course was built on it. And they got together with the family that owned the farmland, and that guy happened to be a little bit of a golfer too, and they just thought that it was a good business decision to try and open something like that up, and it did really, really well for a long time.
That's great. And it's called Rum Creek, isn't it?
Yeah, Rum Creek Golf Course and Driving Range.
That's awesome. So this is kind of like a tin cup kind of story where you're just hanging there and, everyone knows you as the owner's kid. So everyone's kind of looking out for you and you're just spending time chipping and putting and playing on the par 3 all the time. Yeah.
I don't remember a whole lot about it when I was young, but some people come in, almost probably 15 years later now, and they'll ask about, hey, how's the kid doing that was down here all the time? And I'd challenge them to like closest to the pin contest on the driving range, or asking if they wanted to go play, and probably run my mouth a little bit. But
there you go.
Yeah, every once in a while somebody will come back in, and my mom or my dad will be there, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm his mom or I'm his dad, and he's at Georgia Southern now. Well, not anymore, but he's played at Georgia Southern, and he's been down there for however long. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. So you mentioned Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern basically finished the year ranked, about 52 in the nation. You had that great runner-up finish as an individual to eventual winner Matthew Wolff. You had a great junior career, and I just want to know, like, you're surrounded there by Augusta and University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, maybe some bigger named schools that people, if they're just kind of on the fringes of college golf, they recognize those names, maybe not recognize Georgia Southern. How did you ultimately decide on going to Georgia Southern?
Honestly, Georgia Southern was just a really good fit for me. Coming out of high school, I had a really, really great relationship in the recruiting process with my coach, Carter Collins. But I didn't have the greatest junior career. I didn't have a ton of options for where I wanted to go. But even with all that happening, after I visited Georgia Southern, I can confidently say that I think I would have ended up there or down here anyways.
Okay.
No matter what type of offers I had or anything else, it really, really felt like home. And we have an unbelievable practice facility and access to anything we possibly want access to. And then that relationship that I built with him was pretty good. So it worked out great.
So I'm not going to ask you about the facilities because I know that they're fantastic from what I've seen and read about them. But tell me a little bit about the culture at Georgia Southern. If you're not on the golf course and you just have a free weekend, and obviously your studies have been taken care of. You've graduated. You've spent your time there. But what's some of the things that you like to do on campus? What's the culture like at Georgia Southern that maybe someone that's not really heard a lot about the university would be a little bit surprised to hear?
I don't know. I guess everything just moves a little bit slower down here.
Okay.
There's not too much going on. I think the schools on the student population's about almost as big as the actual population of Statesboro. I don't know, man. There's not a whole lot that goes on. Everybody just kind of hangs out, does whatever.
Nice. All right. So let me ask you a couple questions. We mentioned Walker Cup. It is definitely coming up at Royal Liverpool over at Hoylake. When did Walker Cup kind of first get on your radar as something that is a potential, something that maybe you're going to be going for?
I mean, it's always something that you're aware of. Walker Cup's, it's a really big deal. But honestly, after my junior year of college, I wasn't really on their radar probably. And to be honest with you, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought until probably after my fall semester of senior year.
Because you had four consecutive wins in your fall season. So that's probably the big catalyst that got you on everyone's radar. And I know that they had the practice squad. They invited a practice squad to South Florida last December, and you weren't there for that. But I'm kind of bringing that up because it just kind of highlights how things change so quickly. You have players that turn pro early. You have players that maybe were at that session that have fallen a little bit down the world rankings, and then you vault up. When that was announced and you weren't on it, did that register with you at all, or did?
Yeah, it was definitely something that I thought I might be a part of. I was kind of one of the bubble guys.
Okay.
If you go back and look at the rankings.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, there are definitely some guys that went to the practice squad that decided to leave school early and turn pro, which, I mean, that helped me move up the list a little bit. Wasn't a huge deal. I know that the practice squad, thankfully for me, isn't the team itself.
Right.
I'd rather make it on the team than on the practice squad. And I'm hoping that I'm able to continue to keep myself in the position I'm at, or even improve that over the next couple weeks, and really solidify my spot on that team. It's a really big deal, and I'm lucky enough to help put myself in a position where I do feel like I mean, obviously the committee can do whatever they'd like to do, but I feel like with where I'm at right now, I feel like I control my own fate just a little bit, with a couple good finishes in the next few weeks. But, I'm looking forward to trying to compete, the next few weeks and, earn my spot on that team.
Well, it's pretty damn impressive what you've been able to do. Basically the first week of this year in January, you're ranked 39th, in the world, and you were the 17th ranked American. And, as of this week, I mean, we're basically a month out from the USAM. We're in the middle of July, and you're 6 of the US, ranked number 6 with the US guys. So it's just been an incredible jump up that you've done with the last 6 months, basically. The thing that I kind of wanted to ask you about also, just with the Walker Cup, the last thing that you're kind of gearing towards before the team is announced is the U.S. Amateur. I know it's going to be at Pinehurst this year. I think everyone knows that, and people are going to be watching it. What are kind of your thoughts going into the U.S. Amateur? As
for preparation for USAM, I try and keep everything pretty standard no matter what tournament it is. I'm just trying to get my body as ready as it can be to play the best I can play that week. Work a lot on short game, and work a lot on putting, and just try and be, sharp around the greens. Cause I know that at some point there's probably going to be a day that maybe I don't hit it so good, and I'm going to need that aspect of my game to, either keep me in stroke play or, maybe try and stay in a match if I'm lucky enough to make match play. So that's that's kind of where I'm at for it.
Very cool. After looking at video and seeing highlights of your game and your swing, perhaps your swing isn't the most orthodox, and I found it a little bit interesting how you finished runner-up to the guy that has a very unorthodox swing in Matthew Wolff, where to the point where it's like the it thing on Instagram or on social media for people to impersonate it. And I kind of found it interesting how you two finished 1-2 in that. I instead of asking, maybe who your instructor is or how your swing evolved, when do you think you truly took ownership of your swing and said, look, I don't care what people think about it. I don't care about maybe it doesn't look like this guy's swing or this person's swing. Have you kind of always had a sense of ownership of your swing?
I've never actually worked with anybody on my swing.
Okay.
Never had a swing coach or anything like that. I've obviously had, friends or a random instructor or my coach just, look at something every once in a while, but never never a real formal lesson of any kind. And honestly, like we talked about earlier, I grew up on the par 3 course in the driving range. Until I was 14. I mean, I'd go play tournaments other places, but that was where I practiced. I just beat balls all day and just do what felt natural. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that my swing was messed up until I was probably
well, no, wait a minute.
14.
I didn't say your swing was messed up. I just said, no, I don't think your swing is messed up at all.
It looks messed up, but I didn't even know. I mean, I didn't know what a weak grip was or a strong grip was, and until I was, I had to have been in high school, and somebody asked me why I had such a weak grip, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
You're like, I'm grabbing the club hard. It's not falling out of my hands. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, none of that really. I never really learned any of that. I always just, hit balls and tried to, create shots and just do, like I said, do what felt natural. So that was it for me. I mean, I'm not going to try and swing like anybody else. I'm just going to try and hit the golf ball the way I know how to. So I think for a perspective, like trying to say that I take ownership of it, I mean, there's nothing else I can do with it except, let everybody make fun of it every once in a while and try and swing with a strong grip every once in a while if we're messing around at our practice facility.
Which one of your teammates has the best Stephen Fisk swing impersonation?
Oh man.
Now, are you saying that, are you trying to rack your brain to find out one person that has it, or are you trying to decide which one of the many people have it?
Man, I don't know if anybody has it. I mean, they've definitely tried. It's funny. Like if they try and grip it like I do and try and swing it like I do, they'll hit it 120 degrees right or something. And then if I try and, have a strong grip, and don't compensate, if I just make my regular swing with a strong grip, I mean, I can't get a driver airborne. Right. It goes 40 yards straight left into the ground. So it's pretty interesting. We've definitely spent a little bit of time on the driving range working that out.
Congrats on all your success at Georgia Southern, and congrats on runner up at NCAA's. I know you got a great summer ahead of you. Obviously, be looking when the full team gets announced. I know, as you said, you weren't on the practice team, and that wasn't your goal. Your goal is to be on the USA team. So congrats on everything, and hopefully we'll catch up later this summer. Yeah,
thanks, Ben. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me and, shed a little bit of light on all the amateur guys that are trying to make that team. It's a pretty special process, and hopefully everybody that you get a chance to talk to has a good shot at making it. And hopefully we can all get out to England together and tear it up.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Austin Eckroat, Stephen Fisk, and as always, Julie Williams from AmateurGolf.com. We'll see you next time on the Road to Hoylake, here at the back of the range.